last panel. I am Brooke Bowman, and I'm not Rachel Krosky Roberts. I am subbing for Rachel. I'm from Stetson University College of Law, and all I have to say at this point is, wow. I was tangentially involved with the birth of this idea in that I was picking up Kristen and Pam from their hotels at the journal retreat, and all of a sudden they say, you have to see what we've written on this napkin from breakfast. This is what we've discussed. We then picked up David back at Stetson, and I drove him to the airport and this retreat. And then I have to say, wow, I'm subbing, and I went, how do I introduce these three individuals? How did I get this honor? Because like many of you have said already today, I'm standing amongst the rock stars of legal writing, the heroes in my book, the pillars of this discipline. These individuals encourage us, they energize us, they challenge us into the future. They inspire us to be more creative every day, and here I am trying to do this. When I think of the hundreds of books, articles, bar journal articles, newsletters that these three have published, I'm in awe. The hundreds of presentations given and panels served on. The leadership positions in LWI, ALS, AALS, Allwood, and so on. And then I think of how these three individuals and all of you in the first 3 or 4 rows have mentored each and every one of us. And that does not even, I can't even describe that part of your jobs, as well as all the hours of instruction in and out of the classroom, office conferences, oral arguments, the critiquing, reviewing, and commenting that you all and these three have done. But that's where we begin here with program design, the past, present, and future. We have 3 panelists on this panel. First will be Suzanne Rowe, the Director of Legal Research and Writing from the University of Oregon School of Law, who will talk about what we can learn from surveys. Second will be Suzanne Duncan, the Associate Professor of Law from the Louis D. Brandeis School of Law, University of Louisville, will talk about the ABA standards and what is currently happening. And last but not least, Eric Easton, Professor of Law and Co-Director of Legal Skills Program from the University of Baltimore School of Law, will talk about the future, ideas about the future, and thinking outside the box. So I turn it over to Suzanne.
Let me start by saying it's lovely to be back in the South. The Legal Writing Institute's surveys of legal writing programs help us see the professionalization of our discipline, just as time-lapse photography helps us observe the caterpillar's development into a butterfly. The Institute has conducted surveys regularly since 1990. To be accurate, in 1990, Professor Jill Ransfield first conducted a national survey that became the Institute survey. The return rate has been remarkably high, even in the early years when the return rate was above 80%, and in recent years when we've capped 90% of law schools responding. The insights provided by this time-lapse review of legal writing shows clear progress, but that progress has not been unanimously achieved, and a few schools are now trying to stuff their butterflies back into the chrysalis. This presentation will highlight a few of the most significant developments in program design revealed by the Institute surveys, focusing first on programs, then on the professors who teach in them. We have much to celebrate during the Institute's 25th anniversary, but if you've been tempted to romanticize the early days, the following statistics should knock off the rose-colored glasses. Of course, we have challenges facing us, and expanding and enhancing the survey's questions can help us face those challenges and further the professionalization of our discipline. One of the most interesting trends in program design is that schools are moving away from programs. While the survey still asks about the first-year program or the required program, a number of schools, including our host for this symposium, offer legal writing not as a program per se, but as a series of courses and a curriculum. As the parameters of legal research and writing programs become fuzzy, the survey may need to update its language. Whether program or course or curriculum, a few markers of development are clear. less reliance on student teachers, more variety in the curriculum, lower student-teacher ratios, more semesters and credits, and more upper-level skills courses. I'm going through each of those briefly. As programs develop, we see less reliance on student teachers. In 1990, many LRW programs relied on student instructors for some level of teaching, and 7% of schools used student instructors exclusively. Questions on those early surveys about student teachers were so pervasive that it seems to have been the assumption that it was impossible to teach LRW without them. By 2008, the assumption had shifted, as only one school used student instructors exclusively, 2 other schools used teaching assistants for more than 50% of the classroom teaching hours, and 68% of the schools don't use teaching assistants at all. I'm going to be talking about the 2008 survey as the most recent one because the 2009 statistics aren't quite yet available. Variety in the curriculum is another sign of progress. In the early days, many legal writing programs were tightly organized in lockstep fashion. This uniformity helped assure comparable experiences for first-year students being taught primarily by student teachers or short-term instructors. As student teachers and caps on instructor contracts have gone the way of the dodo, with apologies to our colleagues still teaching in the Ice Age, so too has disappeared the need for uniformity. In questions on the survey regarding the curriculum, the 3 answers are uniformity, general consistency, and variety, and the following topics are included: selection of citation text, number of major assignments, due dates and length of assignment, selection of textbook, syllabus coverage, grading, number of minor assignments, and class lectures and exercises. This chart shows the areas of continued uniformity in yellow in the back and highlights increasing variety towards the front in blue. In 2008, uniformity continued in the selection of the citation text, more on that later, and the number of major assignments. The least uniformity has always existed in class lectures, and while in most instances the shift has been from lockstep uniformity to general consistency, in the middle row, in one instance the selection of textbook, not citation text, has been from uniformity to variety. Lower student-teacher ratios are another obvious cause for celebration. Ratios improved significantly, especially in the past 10 years. In 1990, 25 schools had a student-teacher ratio higher than 75 to 1. At 7 schools, a single professor was responsible for over 150 students. And as Jill Ramsfield shared this morning, the worst recorded ratio was 216 to 1, assuring great levels of interaction, feedback, and help for students. As late as 1990, ratios were still high at 53 to 1, and you see steady progress until by 2008, the national average was down to about 41 to 1. I used to think that was for just legal writing, but in an informal survey I did last year, I found that this is really the total teaching load. So when you look at 41 to 1 in 2008, that means that the LRW courses are smaller because people are teaching upper-level courses as well. Of course, the ABA source book on legal writing program suggests a ratio of 35 to 1, so the celebration about decreasing ratios is tempered by the challenges at many schools where the ratios are still too high. Turning to credits and semesters, another great cause for celebration is the fact that LRW is awarded more credit and taught for more semesters. In 1990, 79% of schools required just 2 semesters. Most schools awarded 2 to 4 credits for the course. Embarrassingly, 0 credits was an option, though no one in 1990 admitted offering no credit for a required course. In 2008, it appears that all schools required at least 2 credits for the course. A significant number of schools required additional credits in the second year, and a few required third-year courses. Because of the presentation of the current survey's question, it's hard to tell exactly what the total number of credits is, averaging at most schools. The survey could easily add a question on that, and I encourage it to do so. The surveys always ask helpful questions about what the LRW program covers in those credits and semesters, but as academia moves to outcome measures, I think the survey needs to change the questions it's asking in that regard. I'm foreshadowing Susan, and I'll stop there. In 1990, 60% of the schools offered upper-level electives in LRW. Today, over 90% do. According to the survey, these upper-level courses include general writing courses, drafting in a variety of settings, advanced advocacy, scholarly writing, judicial writing, and advanced research. It's an impressive list, but it feels a little dated or maybe just too limited. It may not be able to include the variety of courses that schools are offering or that they should be offering. It may not, for example, capture the writing across the curriculum courses that Carol talked about this morning. It may not include pro bono projects that include a classroom component. It might inadvertently omit practice labs and business transactions. And it may not include the hybrid course that resulted when an LRW professor started teaching a course like Trust in Estates, or the Trust in Estates law professor realized that incorporating skills into that course energized students and deepens their analytical abilities. The survey can and should capture more of this variety. Moving to part 2, professional teachers. We can't examine the development of legal writing program without examining the progress of the professors who teach in them. Here we see progress in our titles, security of positions, participation in faculty governance. We see some backsliding on academic freedom and perhaps in our use of writing specialists. The titles we have in our schools vary widely. At 40 schools, we are called professor, and when I use professor, there's that gradation from assistant, associate, full. At 47 schools, we have professor of legal writing. Clinical professor is used at 17 schools. Apart from these titles with the magic word professor in them, we have too many instructors followed by lecturers, and then the ever-present other. This chart shows the breakdown. We've come a long way from the 1990s when the survey question asked whether LRW professors were typically referred to as professor, Mr., Ms., or other. Hey, other, you finished grading those 75 papers yet? If you combine the blue, gray, and orange with professor in the title, you'll see that over 50% of schools do use some form of that title. Throughout the life of the survey, some LRW professors have been tenured. In the 1990 survey, 18% of schools said that their predominant staffing model for legal writing included tenure or tenure-track professors. But for decades, the term tenure has had an asterisk next to it, as the professor labored under unreasonable teaching loads, organizing hordes of student teachers, or mentoring a rotating menagerie of short-term colleagues who are expected to leave as soon as they developed any expertise. This tenure didn't offer much opportunity for deep thinking and scholarship, though some people miraculously managed to do it. Today, tenure sometimes means teaching only legal writing. At a growing number of schools, though, tenure really does mean tenure. Professors hired to teach in their primary area of expertise, which happens to be legal research and writing, and other areas when the professor's interest matches the school's need. But in 2008, only 12 schools, that's 7%, reported a staffing model predominantly of tenure-line professors. So now the asterisk has shifted from what tenure means to what the numbers mean. Up to 44 additional schools reported a staffing model that includes tenure or tenure-track programs in a hybrid model. But does that mean we've fallen from 18% of schools with tenure-line faculty in 1990 to 7% in 2008? Or do we have 31% in 2008, or is it somewhere in between? Even without tenure, the LRW positions are more secure. In 1990, 84% of full-time non-tenure track legal writing professors had one-year contracts, and 86% stayed in teaching for 5 years or fewer. As Laurel pointed out this morning, of the 15 founders of LWI, just a handful were still teaching 5 years later. Of the 86 schools that are currently offering full-time non-tenure track positions, 40 have 405C status, something obviously didn't exist for us back in 1990. 56 offer contracts of 3 years in length or more. The challenge is that in 2008, 13 schools still capped the number of years that an LRW faculty member could teach. Kudos to Montana for recently changing from a capped program to a tenure track program. The difficulty in using the survey data here is that schools are asked to check all the categories that apply, so it's difficult to know the overlap. We don't know how many tenure track schools we have. I leave a technical solution to that, so mine's bigger and more technical than mine. Important to these secure positions has been the development of standards for evaluating legal writing faculty. In 1999, the survey first asked the question, are there written standards for evaluating LRW faculty? In 1999, 25% said yes. By 2008, 69% said yes. As LRW professors have earned long-term commitments from their schools, they've increased their voice in faculty governance. The voice is evident in three areas: attending faculty meetings, voting on faculty matters, and participating on faculty committees. The information survey is fragmented, though it shows some important trends. The fragmentation results from the survey's division of LRW faculty into directors and non-directors. This division needs to be phased out as LRW professors erase the lines between themselves as well as between LRW and casebook colleagues. If valid reasons exist for continuing this distinction, the survey could ask for information about everyone, then break out information by status. At least the survey could put the information about directors, the minority, at the end, so it doesn't seem so director-centric. The survey considers attending faculty meetings and voting together, so I will as well. Full participation in faculty meetings is closely linked to job status. In 1994, all tenure-track faculty members were allowed to vote at faculty meetings. Only 42% of LRW faculty who were full-time but not on tenure track received that privilege. In 2008, the survey doesn't even ask the question for tenured line directors, presuming that those directors will have full participation. But among the 126 schools with non-tenure track directors, 18 allowed those directors to attend faculty meetings and vote on all matters. 108 didn't. Let's look at those more specifically. At 54 schools, directors were allowed to attend and vote on all matters except those related to hiring, promotion, and tenure, which of course are the most important issues that we face. At 25% of the schools, the director could attend faculty meetings but not vote. 5 directors were not allowed to attend faculty meetings at all, and disappointingly, 24 directors weren't sure whether they were allowed to participate and vote at meetings at all. It's reasonable to suspect that those directors are not participating fully in faculty governance. Turning to LRW faculty members who are not directors, in 2008, 60%, that's the first two categories here, were permitted to attend faculty meetings and vote on most matters, but is most enough? The numbers of non-participating faculty members are particularly troublesome at a time when the attention of the National Academy is turning to skills training. Those who may bring the most experience to the table aren't being allowed to share their views. The numbers are also disturbing at schools where student representatives are allowed to vote, and full-time faculty members who teach legal writing are not. Faculty governance takes place not just at faculty meetings, but also in faculty committees. In 1999, 4/5 of directors and 2/3 of LRW non-directors were serving as voting members of committees. The current statistics shown here are even more positive. Most directors serve as voting members of faculty committees, and about 3/4 of non-directors are able to serve on faculty committees. By far, the most popular committee assignments for all LRW faculty are curriculum and admissions. For LRW directors, the LRW committee is next. And one has to wonder, why do we need an LRW committee? The next tier popularity for directors are the Appointments Committee and the Library Committee and the Moot Court Committee. Least popular for directors are Technology and Clerkship. Interestingly, those two committees are more popular for non-directors. Makes sense at my school because I have no technological savvy, and one of my colleagues who is not tenure track or a director has served as the chair of our Clerkship Committee for 2 years and done a fabulous job. The survey could capture more information here. For example, which committees do LRW faculty chair, showing not only participation but leadership? On the darker side, are there committees that LRW faculty are precluded from serving on? And for those members who are not allowed to serve on committees, what's a school's reason? The response to one question suggests a problem in academic freedom. Since 2000, the survey has asked which citation manual will be used the following year. It seems a silly question, but who selects your course texts? LRW professors with positions that afford them academic freedom, or deans and non-writing colleagues who know best? That's what it boils down to. Since 2003, we've seen a steady shift from the Allwood Manual to the Blue Book. That would be fine, except for the whispered stories and email confessions of LRW professors being forced to select one citation text over the other. Academic freedom should support each of us making that decision. Remember that we get to choose our own writing text, but not our own citation text. Another challenge concerns writing specialists. As we heard this morning, writing is thinking. And legal writing encompasses all the facets that Carol listed in her presentation this morning. Given the wide array of thinking and writing skills LRW faculty are expected to teach, our courses can't devote much time to writing fundamentals that students should have learned as early as grade school. At the same time, law schools shouldn't be graduating students who can't write. Writing specialists seem the logical solution to diagnosing students' writing problems, whether at the level of sentence structure, organization, genre, or something else, and to teaching students better writing. But why aren't more students hiring writing specialists? After a peak in 2006, where 44 schools had writing specialists, the numbers of schools employing writing specialists has declined. I might be tempted to think this was the normal ebb and flow, but going from 44 to 31 in 2 years sounds like a drop. Hiring writing specialists should show the value the school places on writing and recognize difficulty in teaching writing to law students. It shouldn't be a punt from the legal writing teachers. I've heard colleagues say, I don't teach grammar, with the same tone as, I don't do Windows, or closer to home, I don't teach legal writing, I'm a real professor. Just as legal writing and legal thinking are inextricably connected, so legal writing and grammar are inextricably connected. Ask the Canadian company that had to pay $2 million to renegotiate a contract based on a faulty comma. It's hard to convey that to a student who's never had Marilyn Walter's moment in 6th grade that she was a good writer and that being a good writer made a difference. I think writing specialists can help us diagnose the problems around the spectrum of legal writing. Sadly, the survey doesn't support my view that legal writing specialists should be revered, indispensable colleagues, part of every legal writing program. I hope that changes. Where do we go from here? I'll close by summarizing my recommendations for the survey. An in-depth study by the survey committee with comments from the Institute's 2,200 members is certain to come up with additional recommendations. For the program, clarify questions about staffing models, include outcome measures for LRW courses, expand questions about upper-level courses, and explore the way fundamental writing is taught and who teaches it. For professors, ask questions about participation in faculty governance, add questions about chairing faculty committees, and please quit segregating directors from LRW faculty, or at least faculty directors first. The survey might add questions on aspirations for the coming year to show where programs are heading. This edition might allow us to stay one step ahead, knowing where movement is likely to come in the future. Which of the following you're actively trying to improve at your school in the coming year? Student-teacher ratios, more credit semesters, upper-level courses, job security, voting rights. The survey might also add a question on backsliding in the past year. They would cover the same areas. Did your class size increase? Have you been unable to teach upper-level classes? Was a director position downgraded from tenure to contract? Were LRW faculty not allowed to participate in the dean search? Were you told which citation manual to use? Were your legal writing publications not valued as scholarship? Has your program moved from full-time teachers to adjuncts and fellows? Gathering this type of information might feel like pulling the wings off butterflies, but it could also help convince the ABA Council that sets standards for accreditation of law schools that interpretation 405D isn't sufficient. One final recommendation from someone who spent hours poring over surveys from the past 18 years. Maybe that's a table of contents and a handout. The survey has proved to be an invaluable tool in advancing program design. I salute those of you who envisioned the survey, those of you who have worked tirelessly on it for years, and those of you who will take it into our next quarter century.
Hello, I'm Susan Duncan, and thank you so much for inviting me. This has been a fantastic day. I also love being in the deeper South, where nobody asks me where I'm from or makes fun of how I talk. So this has been great. My part of this presentation in my article is examining the history and the current action on the law school accreditation standards and suggesting how those might impact our program just for law schools generally and in legal writing specifically. I thought for the students I would just talk very briefly about how the process of changing a standard happens, because you might not know how this all works. So what happens is when they want to review the standards or change the standards, it goes to a standards review committee. And that's they are under the council of the ABA. So this standards review committee is engaged in a 3-year review right now of all the standards that your schools are accredited by. So there's standards like Suzanne talked about on job status, there's standards about your curriculum, standards about your library, so all the standards that when they come to do a site visit they look at. So right now they're trying to look at all those and revise those in the rules of procedure. So what the Standards Review Committee has done is divided that into subcommittees and have different groups looking at all these different issues. So they've made a schedule for the next 3 years. They're taking these in chunks and they're vetting them in the subcommittees. Then they're coming up with drafts, giving it to the Standards Review Committee. Then once the Standards Review Committee is comfortable, they'll take a vote and get it up to the council. Once the council's heard it, they'll send it out for public comment. So we'll have an opportunity to go to hearings, talk about the standards. And then it goes to the House of Delegates of the ABA. And the House of Delegates will either concur with those standards review changes or they'll send it back for further consideration. And I believe that after the second referral, the council's standards will go into effect. So I don't think they can keep bringing it back. I've had the opportunity the last couple of years to start going to the Standards Review Committee meetings and the council meetings, which are very interesting. For the students, they are composed of practitioners and judges and law professors, and they're big groups. How many people would you say? Maybe 30 or something on these committees. And they also invite interested people to come and watch these meetings. So that's what I am. I'm one of those people that sit around the room and watch what they're doing. They report back to the Legal Writing Institute and Association of Legal Writing Directors. So we've been watching this closely. And some of these standards over the years have really helped legal writing programs. So it not always was there a requirement that you had to have a first-year writing experience. And not always did you have to have an additional writing experience after the first year. And those are fairly recent, believe it or not. And not always did you have any kind of 405D status. You could be on those capped programs, and that's all changed. But I'm not going to go into that. I'm going to talk about what's new. So what you can expect in the future, probably not by the time you graduate, but I bet shortly after some of these things will go into effect. It's a little bit difficult to talk about these because they are changing so constantly. It's so dynamic. Every time I go to another meeting, there's a whole other set. In fact, when I started to write the article, I accidentally had the wrong draft in the article at first because that's how quickly they're changing. And lots of people are interested in these changes. So they're getting a lot of comments, the Standards Review Committee, from interested groups. So individual professors are writing in about it. You've got groups of people. So all the legal writing groups are writing in about these. The clinicians are writing in. There's a big interest from the people that teach ethics. So we're starting to see them come to the meetings. They're writing. So you'll see a lot of submissions. And one way, if you want to kind of watch what's going on and be able to give your input, because some students have written it too, which would be great, is to go to the ABA's website And if you go to the abanet.org, you can find the Standards Review Committee, and if anybody wants the long site, I'll give it to you. But that's where all the drafts go up and all the submissions go on that website. And it's a very helpful website. So if you want to see what LWI is writing about it, or what the SALT group, the Society of American Law Teachers, have written about these proposals, all that's posted for the public. And you can also see what some students have written. One of the things that they have, they haven't passed very much yet. A lot of this is still in the vetting stage. But one thing that they have passed that I believe will probably go to the council in December is that there used to be a student-faculty ratio standard that talked about student-faculty ratios and how you calculated those. And I know for the students you might not believe this, but legal writing people were counted as 0.7. We were not a whole person, how they could count the ratios. So they have now decided that they are going to delete this method of calculating the ratios, and their logic was that it wasn't important to you students what the student-faculty ratio is in any of the schools you're looking at. So that's not something you really care about, how many students each teacher would teach. So when they decided to do away with the ratio and not tell the schools how to publish the ratios, there was some discussion about, well, how are we going to keep the schools from having false or misleading ratios reported in their brochures to you or on their website? How will we do that? So should the ADA make a rule somehow where they do a better job of showing how to calculate it? Because there was some why they got rid of it in the first place was they said schools were playing fast and loose with how they did the ratios, and they were playing games with these, and it was difficult to calculate who was 0.7 and who was a real person. So they talked about, well, should they make your schools then have a disclaimer? So if Mercer wants to publish a student-faculty ratio, they have to tell the consumer how they did it, so we would know and we could look at schools to make sure they were being truthful. Others said, no, we just should make a rule that they can't report it at all. If we're going to not tell them how to report these, then no school can report it. That would be against ABA rules. And they didn't know what that would do to the U.S. News and World Report figures, because that is one of the things I believe on the U.S. News and World Report, your student-faculty ratio. So would they just make up their own way to do the student-faculty ratios? So eventually this went on for several meetings that I went to, and eventually they just decided to do nothing, and they'll just deal with it when a school provides inaccurate information. Which is very interesting, because the whole reason we got rid of these interpretations is because schools weren't doing the right thing. Now we have no rules, but all the schools are going to do the right thing, and we're not going to do anything until there's some inaccurate information. So I don't know how we'll actually know if it's inaccurate, but that's where we are with that one. So I think that will go to the council. It'll be interesting to see what the council does with that. We objected to that as a legal writing community for the following reasons. We thought that they hadn't spent enough time examining alternatives to this ratio. Was there a better way to do the ratio before you got rid of it? We thought that they were not adequately deciding whether the impact to you students, whether depriving the students of the student-faculty ratio information was important. So we wanted them to spend more time looking at what that would do to students if you didn't have that information. We thought that there's been a big push for transparency and consistency in the accreditation process. So when they come to schools, what meets the standards, what doesn't meet the standards, and at least this was a basic approach that we could agree that you had enough faculty resources. If we looked at your ratio, now we wouldn't even have that. And so as we're trying to be transparent, it seems like we're taking a step backwards. And then a lot of schools had relied on this rule and had put some institutional resources on trying to get their student-faculty ratios down. And so what would it do to them? So we objected. Another big motivator, and SALT brought this up, was that a lot of times schools had started to put legal writing and clinician professors on the tenure track so they could count us. So it was a good motivator for a school to move us from 0.7 to more job security, and that way they could count us. We don't know what will happen with this, if that'll go backwards. Okay, so the big thing they're talking about, besides the ratios, is this concept called outcome measures. And you've heard early today why they're looking at outcome measures. A lot of it has to do with the Carnegie report, so that was the critique of legal education, best practices. that came out by Roy Stuckey. That was a clinical document that came out that talked about things that should be done in legal education. Many other professional schools do an outcome type measure approach. So medicine, they've interviewed people from medicine, architecture, dentistry, all use that approach. Foreign law schools use that approach. And there's been a general trend in higher ed, so we're kind of behind the times, to use this outcome measures approach, so more centered upon learning and not so much teaching. So what will our students know how to do at the end? Not what we offer to you students, but what we know how to do. And that's what we should be measuring. Not everybody's going to be for this. So I can tell you that there are going to be a lot of professors that are very surprised by this. Some will say that it ruins their academic freedom, that you're going to tell us what to teach. Others, I think, are going to be very worried that if you have to assess the outcomes and your class doesn't come out so well, what will that mean to you? I think they're going to say that we can't measure our goals for higher ed, that that's too hard to do, so we can't really measure it, and that lots of things happen beyond faculty control to influence student learning, so we shouldn't be measuring it. I think, though, it is coming from the meetings I'm going to. I think that train has left, and we will see some. So they're using mainly a fourfold approach for this. They're identifying outcomes. They say that the schools have to identify their outcomes, that you have to offer a curriculum so the students can meet that outcome. Then you have to assess the outcomes. So we're going to have to do some kind of assessment to see if you're getting the outcomes that we want you to have. And then we have to assess the assessment. So the great news for legal writing people, I think, is we already do this. So this is going to be nothing that new for legal writing people. I think for other professors, it'll be very new. I brought you all the draft, the most recent draft that I have of how they're going to change the standards. Okay. So you'll see that they've broken it up exactly by those 4 themes. In 302A, they said you have to identify the outcomes. They've already given us some that they say you have to offer now as law school. And, luckily, legal analysis, reasoning, legal research, and are all part of those. So that's specific in some of the outcomes that you're going to have to offer as a school. So I don't think we have to argue for those. Those are in there. They talk about, though, that you can offer other outcomes that the school wants to offer that you think is important. So when the schools are looking at their other outcomes they want to do, they're really going to have to focus on what's the ends, not the means, and they're going to have to be concrete about what these outcomes should be. So it's going to take learning a new vocabulary. I mean, we're going to have to know what the difference is between a goal, what the difference is between a learning outcome, what's a learning objective. So we're going to all have to learn, I think, a lot more about this discipline of assessments and outcome measures to be able to do this effectively. So legal writing's in here, so that's good. The next thing you're going to do is you'll see you have to offer a curriculum so students achieve the outcomes. In that one, at the bottom of the page, 302B and C, you will see that they kept the language from the previous standards. So they've kept in there, you have to have 1 rigorous writing experience in the first year and at least 1 additional writing experience. An earlier version of this draft did not have that in there. They took out that you had to have 1 writing experience in the first year and a rigorous one. It was out. I was at that meeting and objected very forcefully that I did not think that should be taken out, that at a minimum you had to have that to have a sound legal education, and now it's back in, which is good. I think we need to watch that carefully to make sure that stays in. Even the schools that have outcome measures, so architecture and medicine, in pharmacy was there one day, and they were interviewing those accreditors, they still have input measures. So they still require a class, so like we would for legal writing. So that even those bodies said you don't have to get rid of every input for you to go to an outcome-based measure. So I think we should argue that this input at least should stay in, that you have to have a first-year writing class and then this rigorous writing experience. The next part of it is assessing your learning outcomes. Assessing learning outcomes, which will be the most different thing, I think, for law faculties to get their hands around, is this is not just about grades. You cannot have 1 final anymore at the end of the semester. That will not do it for these new standards. I'm pretty sure they will not accept that. So that's just a summative kind of assessment. They're going to also have to do formative assessment. So things that they're doing to see if you're learning and if I'm becoming a better teacher because of it. So that means they're going to have to try to give you multiple assessments, so not just everything on one day, because maybe the way I give that is not perfect for your learning style, or maybe there's other external things going on in your life that you don't do so well on that one day, so we need to look at it over the entire semester, give you multiple times to do things. And some of it will be more indirect, like they should give you minute papers where they just ask a question about something you know, and we collect them, and they're not going to be graded, but I just look at them to see. Or you'll have journal writing, maybe. Or you'll put together portfolios. So there's all these ideas going around how we would assess. But the two big things I think they'll look for is whether or not you're assigning several assessments, and then are they varied. You can't just keep giving an essay test to satisfy this one. And that will be very different, I bet, from what you're used to in your law school classes. Finally, they want you to assess the assessment. And so that's really to look at the institutional effectiveness, not so much what how the students are doing individually, but how are we doing as a law school. So we'll be looking at how these assessments are coming out to our missions and our goals and our learning outcomes. So how are we doing as an institution? We'll need to probably begin with an assessment audit. So what kind of assessments are being done? You know, what's being done in the classrooms already now with all our professors? How do those relate to the learning goals? Can the professor show that that exam at the end relates to a learning goal? I mean, if you say you want critical thinkers, you can't just give them multiple choice tests. That might not relate to the learning goal. So we're going to have to show a connection. We're probably going to have to work together a lot more as colleagues. We can't just talk about our individual classes now, so I think all professors will need to come together, and we'll have to do curriculum mapping. Maybe some of your schools do that, but I think that'll be fairly foreign to most law faculties, that we actually have to tell which class you're getting those objectives. So if one of our objectives is to make you a proficient writer, we've got to say where in the curriculum you're getting that, and you have to have multiple opportunities to get those. So I think you'll see we're going to have to learn about that. Oh gosh, this is so hard to do in 20 minutes. so many things going on at the ABA. But I guess the thing that I think we can do as legal writing professors, and you can do as students, is first of all, stay familiar with what's going on. This is going to affect, like I said, probably not the ones of you that are in here right now, but in the next few years it will. So the people you know in college, it probably will affect. So if you have opinions on this, the time to write about that is now. And have your FCA or other organizations here submit things, or even send them to me, you know, and I can get them to the right people. Because I really think legal education is going to be delivered very differently. Probably more like how we do it in legal writing, which I think will be a good thing. For the legal writing professors, I would say start to get a thorough knowledge of assessment literature. I've learned so much just trying to get up to speed going to these meetings. And I brought 3 of the books I used a lot for preparing for this. Was this one, Assessing Student Learning by Susky. This other one, Assessment Clear and Simple, is very good. It had a guide for how to do this in the department level, so a law school level. And then Sophie Sparrow and her co-authors just published this in 2009, and it has a whole chapter on assessment. So it's really helpful. So, and I'm going to put a bibliography in the article also. But I think if we become the experts, we're going to be on the curriculum committees, like you saw from Suzanne. There's going to be new assessment committees. They're going to need chairs for that. I think we're the logical people to do that. We're the logical people to help talk about learning style and how we do assessments. We're used to giving multiple drafts, giving feedback, and that's the whole underlying principle behind this new shift, is to get the students to figure out what you're learning and then provide you with a lot of feedback and have this loop where it helps you learn better and it helps improve my teaching and it helps the institution. And we probably have not done that very well. We've usually just kind of evaluated you've gotten a grade, but it really didn't tell me how much you learned, or it didn't really help my teaching, or maybe it just helped me in my class. But now I'm going to have to talk to my colleagues about what I've learned, and hopefully collectively we're going to make this a better education experience for law students by paying attention to what the assessments are saying. And then you have to show, under these standards, how you've used those assessments to improve. So they can't just go on a shelf. I mean, we're going to have to show how we've improved. So it will be very different, I think, but very exciting. So I don't think we need to be scared about this as legal writing professors. I think we are going to be some of the biggest leaders in this. And I think we just need to watch what happens in the next year and keep sending people and staying in touch so we know what's going on. Thank you.
I'm the last speaker of the last plenary of the day. So, what an exciting day this has been. I can't tell you how exciting this has been. My task here was to talk about program design and kind of thinking outside the box a little bit. And well, I'll show you this. You may not be able to see this, but this script is so full, it's got more ink marks in it than it has type, just from things that have gone on today. So much of what I thought was thinking outside of the box is mainstream in your thinking, and it's really incredible. On the other hand, Suzanne's presentation keeps us from being lulled into a false sense of security. We hear about all of these things like integrated programs and outcome assessments, and when you look at the stats, they're not all that good. There's a lot of work yet to be done. All of us have, I think, at one time or another, had occasion to consider or reconsider the program model we've been working with. Usually there's a trigger of some sort. Could be a new dean, the prospect of a sabbatical inspection, could be a budget crisis like what we're going through now, or the opposite, could be a financial windfall in some cases. There might be a new faculty champion arise for a particular kind of program innovation, or a faculty saboteur. We know that guy, right? And it might be something that we learned at an LWI or Allwood conference. It could also be just the cycle of bureaucratic reorganization that comes around every so many years to decide that, yes, torts should be 3 credits, no, torts should be 6 credits, no, it should be 4 credits, you know, that never-ending cycle. These reconsiderations have led to a fair diversity of program models. 3, 4, all-semester programs, adjunct contract, tenure track, staffing models, directors, co-directors, no directors, writing specialists, teaching assistants, no teaching assistants, teaching librarians, postgraduate fellows, you name it, they're out there. There's some model like this out there. I think our curricula reflects some fresh thinking as well. The introduction of more and varied practice skills in our programs, counseling, negotiation, drafting, client communications, professional responsibility, even law firm management now and again creeps into the curriculum. Some of us have ventured even further away from the traditional model to integrate our programs with first-year or upper-level courses to support or at least champion writing across the curriculum and to acknowledge the phenomenon of globalization by exporting our teaching or importing our students. We've been guided in these innovations by a variety of studies. McCrate in '92, the Sourcebook in '97 and 2006, Carnegie and Best Practices in 2007. You've heard mentioned over and over again here today. And new studies that keep coming up every day, including some of these on assessment. And of course, we've freely shared our ideas and experiences among ourselves at national, international, regional conferences, journals, law reviews, listservs and blogs. Talk about a lot of these innovations, I hope, in the article that I'm preparing for the LWI Journal, but today I just want to step back a little bit from the detail and take a long view as to where we may be headed. And my central thesis is simply this: the time for reconceptualizing and reinventing LRW programs is ending. And the time to destroy them is coming. It's our job to take the lead in that enterprise. I thought when I wrote this it would sound a little subversive. After today, I hope it's a little provocative, but hardly subversive. Since Langdell's day, legal education has straddled the divide between the academy and the profession. We all know that. Since Langdell's day, the academies had the upper hand, and we all know that. The introduction of professional skills courses is comparatively recent development. Most were taught by adjunct practitioners, or more recently still by undervalued clinicians and legal writing teachers. Over the past 25 years, which we're celebrating today, we have professionalized our programs, our curricula, and by adopting and adapting scholarship, academic scholarship as a value, our own status. As a consequence, though, we may have become somewhat complacent. Some of us are now deans and associate deans. Some of us are acknowledged faculty stars. Many of us are tenured, full professors, or well on the way. And with clinicians and other supportive faculty, at least a few of us now have the numbers to win faculty votes in our institutions. And yet, we continue to work in an academic world that takes its priorities from more than a century ago in the face of documented demands to the contrary by the principal consumers of our labor, namely the profession. Again and again, we're told that our students are not ready for practice when they graduate from law school. That's the message we get from new apprenticeships that we see being created in law firms. Again and again, their deficiencies are identified and solutions suggested, as if no one ever read McCrate or Carnegie or best practices. Again and again, that advice is ignored. Why? I think it's because the academic tail still wags the professional dog, and it's time to reverse the emphasis in law school. It's going to be up to us to lead the way. It's time to take charge of legal education, and program design is our Archimedean fulcrum. Now, I'm not advocating that we abandon the struggle for status within the status quo. Scholarship remains the coin of the realm. I don't suggest that we return to the day when we were neither expected nor encouraged to write. Certainly our students have benefited from our research. I hasten to add, however, that excludes most of my own work, which I'm one of that 75% that Mary Beth talked about, whose research priorities were established long before I even had a sense of the legal writing community. And I'm certainly not asking anyone to jeopardize job security or career advancement. On the contrary, the more deans and tenured professors we can produce, the easier that revolution will be. But I am charging those of us with some clout, whether pervasive or situational, to take program design, restructuring, and other opportunities to advance 3 specific goals. First, take over the first-year curriculum. All of it, as the opportunities arise. As Carol said earlier, and much more elegantly, teachers have to teach the core curriculum. At many schools, that means us. It means us, it means clinicians, it means other conscientious faculty members. There are many fine legal scholars who are also outstanding teachers, but there are others who are not. And teaching in the first year should not be a chore that's expected of all faculty, regardless of their teaching skills. Let us replace those who would do better in upper-level seminar courses. I think the introduction of outcomes assessment will help us along the way. I don't think it'll be as hard as you might think either. I know some doctrinal colleagues that would much rather teach their upper-level specialty courses anyway than the first-year courses they've been tasked to teach. And of course, you've already taught all the first-year doctrine anyway in your memo assignments, your brief assignments. I know there are some faculty colleagues who don't think you can teach doctrine. Don't you ever think you can't teach doctrine. I've taught contracts and torts in both standalone courses and integrated legal writing courses, and if I can do it, you can do it. We can all do it. There are a variety of ways to do this. You might be able to structure your program so that each legal writing teacher can teach one doctrinal course every semester, every other semester. You might be able to integrate your legal writing course with one or more doctrinal courses following the late lamented PACE model, as we've done in Baltimore. You may even be able to bring some doctrinal teachers into the conspiracy, at least temporarily, till they realize how much work they have to do. The models work pretty well for us in Baltimore. We're gradually turning our faculty and administration into believers. We still have problems. Our classes are still too big. Continuation courses pose some coordination problems. The faculty is not as stable as we'd like it to be from year to year. But we think we have good support for the changes that we want to make. Of course, now this integrated program, this is not the integrated program that some of us probably remember from law school. I remember my legal writing class, and I suppose at least some of your legal writing classes consisted of a doctrinal teacher saying, here, this is a memo assignment, go do it. And oh, by the way, stop by the library and they'll give you some handouts so you can do the legal research as well. This is certainly a far cry from that. Of course, my memo came back marked good, and I was really thrilled about it. It didn't have any other marks on it. It just said good, so I figured, well, I'm done with that. The second point that I would urge is that however you manage to seize control of the first-year curriculum, refocus it to reduce reliance on reading cases and increase the time spent on preventive law, such as drafting contracts, problem solving, settlement agreements, litigation process, pleadings, discovery documents, motions, etc. You all know from your own experience that your students, and you students know this too, that you don't ever forget the doctrine that you learned from doing a memo or doing a brief. That doctrine stays with you forever. It's the other doctrine that flies out of your head the minute the bar exam's over. We need to incorporate more of that even at the expense of coverage. The big, we have to get through the whole book attitude. We do need teaching materials to do that. There were a couple of stacks of books here before that Mary Beth brought up. Wonderful books. I love you, the authors. I love all of those books. We need different books now. We need books. We need torts books. We need civil procedure books. We need crim books. We need contracts books. Not just that add a few problems sprinkled through the books, but that integrate the writing, integrate the documents that we use, integrate the kind of client letters and memos and pleadings and motions and briefs and transactional documents that you need to fill those books. Where we can do it, writing across the curriculum is a no-brainer. The declining culture, as I call those folks, maybe will be resistant to it. It requires a lot more time and effort than many of our colleagues are willing to devote to teaching. And it may be more difficult to inculcate certain professional values where professors only grudgingly accept the requirement. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't keep the pressure on to incorporate writing across the curriculum wherever we can. Third, insinuate yourself, your colleagues, program into the upper division using whatever entree you can find or create. Advanced writing courses, of course, writing centers for scholarly writing, for job-oriented writing samples, bar preparation, pre-bar preparation courses, clerkship research and writing boot camps, all of those things. Those of us who also teach upper-level specialties and write the conventional navel-gazing law review articles can maybe assuage our guilt a little bit by introducing the skills and values of this new culture, this emergent culture, into those courses as well. Find common ground with clinicians and externship supervisors. Get involved in career services programs. Stake out seats on appointments, curriculum, new assessment committees, and other important committees. Above all, make sure that promotion and tenure policy committees recognize our scholarship and our peer-reviewed journals. Bring practitioners into the planning and implementation of your integrated courses. They have a stake in the success of your efforts, and they can help you overcome some of the likely resistance to it. Get involved in bar exam administration. Lobby for changes that emphasize practice skills and exert some external pressure for change in the law school. By now you may be thinking that I probably have too much time on my hands if I can do all of, or any of this while I'm grading 100+ memos during the semester. You already know what that deal is about. We work hard. We work harder than anyone else. We'll keep working hard. Do it. Add it to your workload. You're tough. You're going to do it anyway. The kind of systemic change, though, takes more than just hard work from us. We have to have smaller classes. We have to have more faculty. The 100-student doctrinal class should have been jettisoned a long time ago. Now, that has to be part of the change, too. If the profession wants practice-ready graduates, they have to step up to the plate and help us with the resources to do it. This may not be the year for your school to change. It's not easy to ask for more resources in this economy, but sooner or later that change is going to come. Ultimately, I think your program will cease to be a program. It will become the dominant culture of the law school. And ultimately, preparing our students for practice will become the dominant culture of legal education. I'm seeing signs of that all around the country. Law schools are taking seriously their mission to educate students for practice. As my grandmother used to say, come the revolution.
Questions?
Okay, I have about 10 here. But I'm going to limit
Just the easy
myself
ones,
to one, and it's probably one of the hardest ones about the survey. I have a lot of ideas for questions that I will share with you later, but the one thing that I think is a tough one, directors usually fill out the survey. I think some directors are limiting the academic freedom of the people on their faculty. And I think we should be asking that question, but I don't expect too many directors to say, well, yes, I am. Or maybe they will, and that will be good, but I think that if we really want to get the answer to that, we need to be asking non-directors. And so I think that's a real tough question. Yeah, I was thinking that too.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
And when are you going to be sharing the survey? That's the next question.
No. The year I was on sabbatical, one of my colleagues filled out the survey, and I thought it was a great learning experience for her and for me that I gave her the past answers and say, you answer them the way you think they should be answered. So I think it's a great idea to have non-directors fill out the survey. I don't know if we want to do 2 surveys per school, or if we want to rotate it around. Again, they're bigger minds than mine who figure out the statistical part of things, but I do think we need to get information from more than just the directors. Yeah.
Go ahead, Christian.
Is there someone behind me? Well, I just wanted to follow up on that. I mean, I think by asking about programs, we continue to perpetuate this notion that everybody's doing the same thing. So when I'm trying to answer those questions on behalf of the school, it's much more complicated, and I'm not sure we're getting really good data. So I don't know how you do it, but in order to promote faculty autonomy, we should be asking people who self-identify as teaching legal writing about a lot of these things. Do you select your own books? Do you select your own problems? How much control do you have? Because I don't know that we would ask one torts professor about what's going on in the torts curriculum. And so I am concerned that the data that we're actually getting is really not quite accurate, because I'm having trouble answering the questions because it doesn't reflect the way our department is moving in terms of faculty autonomy.
2 quick answers to that. First is the first question of the survey does ask, who are you that's submitting this? And it could be the director, and it could be someone else.
Right.
But yes, most of the people who respond are directors. I think that there are actually 2 levels of questions we're talking about here. When I looked at the survey, there's some hard questions that I just want answers to. How many credits is your program, your curriculum worth? Can't find that information. Anybody on the faculty can answer those. But there may be a second level of questions that go to some of these more nuanced things that we need to ask more people the answers to those questions.
I have a question about what Susan was talking about, and I just really want to emphasize how important this shift to the outcomes is. If you read through the standards now, you see things like how many minutes of this, how many tens of thousands of minutes of instruction there have to be. Pure kind of input model, count up the minutes. And that really is where we're going. And it's very interesting. I have my questions about this phrase, rigorous writing experience, because in this draft that you've given us, it's put in what would be new 302B, and you describe that as being an input, and it looks like that because it's about an offering. But I want to encourage us, and I guess my question is, can we really do this? Well, to talk about this very carefully, because I think you could cast a rigorous writing experience not as an input. Yes, you have to offer it, but it is it is in a sense an outcome, because Eric showed us. If you are the person who comes away saying, gosh, nobody has ever gone through my writing in any kind of care, I get on the end of my papers, good, A, which I certainly have heard from my students. In a sense, that's an outcome there. They've never had that experience. The experience itself is an outcome. And just being able to say, every law student in this country, if you get a JD, you better have gone through an experience like that, where somebody goes through line by line very carefully in some systemic way. So I just would toss it out there, and can we do that? And if so, how can we do that really well? I think that's going to be something that I would love to hear more conversation about.
I just have a point of information about that, and that is the regs that, or the interpretations that that go with this. One of the things they say is a rigorous writing experience will be evaluated based on how many drafts, how much interaction with the teacher. Unfortunately, it doesn't say what is the status of that teacher.
It actually says instructor, so it can't. It's been interpreted, I think, so it can't.
Okay, so instructor, but it could be an adjunct. It could be. So I mean, so there is a little of that specificity right now, and I think that is staying. I don't think that interpretation is on the way up.
Yeah, they haven't talked at all about the interpretations for that.
But I think that's important to keep our eye on.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think we have to be really, really careful, because I get in these conversations and it gets turned around. Oh, you're talking about inputs again,
Yeah.
which now has a pejorative meaning, and so we have to be careful about how we talk about it.
Yeah.
I was just going to say that I've been peripherally involved with the outcome assessment also, and I was at the SRC meeting where the latest draft was vetted, and I really want to echo what Susan says. I mean, this is, and also what Carter's saying, the train has left the station. We don't exactly know what those outcome assessment standards are going to look like, but there is tremendous excitement about it from what I can see. I think it's going to be incremental until over a period of years, but it will fundamentally change legal education in very positive ways, and we should all be looking at it. And I would just, you know, they allow the visitors to say something at the end of these meetings and walk around the room, and the incoming president of AALS has been attending these also, particularly on these hands, and particularly on assessment. I saw him at the Denver Assessment Conference. And he's taken great interest in watching this. And his comment at the time about how our law school is going to be receiving this, and he just looked at the SRC and he said, you know, you're just going to have to walk that horse into the barn. And it was just a wonderful, it was just a wonderful comment, and I think it's where we are, and it is very exciting for legal education.
And I'll post on the listserv, but if any of you are going to be in New Orleans, I think it's Friday afternoon, they're going to have a panel discussion about it. So it would be great for, I'm not going to be there, but it'd be great for people to go and listen to what they're saying. I think they're going to try to, usually they have these hearings after it's gone to the council. This time, Standards Review Committee is committed to getting a lot of feedback before it ever gets to the council. They want to have a lot of buy-in. So I think this is the first time they're really letting the broader academy hear about this and get some details, because a lot of people are very confused what it is.
And I would also just add, for those of you interested in this, on the ABA website, if you go to the, I think the specific website for this section, a lot of this grew out of a very important report on outcome assessment measures by Randy Hertz, who, if you know who Randy Hertz is, you know, this is, he's really been a huge leader in this, and they're paying close attention. And that report itself, that sort of gave birth to some of this, is really well worth reading.
I just wanted to ask you, Susan, is there any discussion of how the idea of showing improvement over time, so we assess and we say, well, only 50% got this at the level we expect, is going to relate to relative grading or curving?
Yeah, I haven't heard anything about that, but it's so sketchy right now, first of all, and the assessment books say that the creditors shouldn't really worry about what the assessments show, but just that you're assessing and then improving. Like, they shouldn't worry if you have 50%, but that you're paying attention to it and what have you done to try to change it.
But would it mean that you would have then 55% the next time? I mean, what does improvement mean? Improvement in assessing? The assessment is more accurate, or that you're getting better outcomes with your students on the whole, that the entire curve is moving forward?
I think they'll want better assessment, you know, the curves going forward, but it's very individual to every school too. It's going to depend on your mission and your own goals, so none of this will be a cookie cutter.
We don't know. We don't know. I mean, law schools, the way they've envisioned this, law schools will define their mission, and
it'll be very individual.
Assessment will have to be.
Curving means.
But they say the curve, it doesn't contemplate eliminating curves. That was one of the lines I remember, one of the many pieces.
Well, this is going to have to continue at dinner. Brittany's going to kill me.
Thank you so much.
One of our most dynamic speakers. Finishing us off, looking into the future. We've done 25 years of retrospective, talked about exciting things, but now we're going to hear just very quickly from Ruth Ann Robbins, the current president of the Legal Rights Institute.
I can
see from the movement in the back that this is going to have to be the energizing portion of the day, and so we're going to have to do a kinesthetic exercise. So I want everybody to take out something that is shaped like this, and we will be using it towards the end. And there's a visual coming around because I'm a visual person. I can't stand not having a visual. And I have to say that when Eric said that he had written all over, look, I've had to rewrite this thing because I was supposed to be the wrap-up of where are we headed, and everybody's already been talking about where we've been headed. So I just get to summarize and say, where are we going? Every single presenter here has talked in terms of story, and so I'm going to talk in terms of story structure and talk about where we have been from a story perspective and where we're going, and hopefully teach a little bit about my favorite subject, heroic archetype, but really everybody has said it all. And so I know that some of you in the audience may be thinking, oh no, where is she going? Because everybody's been competing to be the most provocative speaker of the day. And for those of you who know me, know that I am the person who put the Badass Women of Legal Writing stuff for sale on Cafe Press. And we're a little bit scared when I was elected right here at Mercer 4 years ago to take over and lead the Legal Writing Institute. And hopefully I haven't done too bad a job, but I do know that I received some phone calls saying, we're terrified that you're going to take this institution down or do something terrible with it. So hopefully I have it. But I have been talking about a vision, and it sounds like everybody in LWI has the same vision. And that's to use our resources to facilitate the development of our field and to simultaneously build more bridges with everybody around us. And I think that we've made tangible progress towards this. We have been, in the last several years, reaching out and have built real bridges with clinicians. We have built real bridges with SALT. We are working to support the academic success programs who are the next people coming up the ladder and who need our support. We are working on the ABA issues. We are, though, at a tipping point for ourselves, to use a borrowed and hackneyed literary illusion. And I promised I would teach a little bit about storytelling, so here I go. Any organization has a life cycle, a heroic path. And the experts in the field of developmental psychology and Jungian psychology are always talking about how we're moving on that path until we choose to move down a different path. We have plot lines we choose to live. And I have on that handout a quote from Carol Pearson, who's a PhD, who loves to look at heroic archetype across many disciplines, be it business, interpersonal, advertisement. She looks at it, she just loves Carl Jung, and she just loves Joseph Campbell, and I love her too. And so there's that quote that I've given you that I think really helps define what we should be doing with ourselves. Freedom begins the moment we become conscious of the plot line we are living, and with this insight can step into a different storyline altogether. We get to choose our storyline. She goes on to say, our experiences in life are quite literally defined by our assumptions. We make up stories about the world, and to a great degree we live out their plots. What our lives are like then depends on the scripts we have consciously, or more likely unconsciously, have adopted. So what scripts has LWI been following for the last 25 years, and which ones should we leave? And we start out, in heroic archetype, there are several different kinds of heroes. They're all on the chart. They actually sort of have a progression themselves. Not all heroes are crafted equally. We started out as the orphan hero searching for community. And I left blank how to best the dragon when we're orphans because it's so obvious. We created LWI. So that's how we bested it. We created a society. We have shown that we have found our voice, or we are finding our voice, and been the explorer heroes. Finding our voice as the pedagogy experts in the school, finding ourselves as the composition experts in the school. But really at this point, the explorer, the pedagogy voice belongs to academic success, and there we should probably leave it and support them. We have chosen to prove ourselves, which is what a warrior hero does. I know that Hollywood likes to think that the only kind of hero is a warrior hero, but that's really somebody struggling to show that I can overcome a dragon by absolutely killing it. We work and continue to work, erasing lines. We had a conference called that. We have our status struggles. It's a storyline that we love to live of, we need to continue to fight. And I think that we have to live that storyline to a certain degree. We've also proved ourselves by being creator heroes. We have created the discipline in which we have that stack of textbooks. We have lots and lots of textbooks in legal writing. And we have shown ourselves to be caregiver heroes in the law school community. How many legal writing professors are the go-to girls, and I use that as a gender-neutral term, of the law school when they need somebody to chair a special project? Whose door do they knock on? We know that. We give back to our communities generously. When the students need letters of recommendation written, who do they go to? And we give of ourselves for that. And we love doing it. Sometimes we sacrifice ourselves a little bit and give up our weekends to do it, but whatever. We do it because we're caregiver heroes, and that's a storyline that we have, and we're proving ourselves too. We have sacrificed, but there's higher order storylines that we can choose. We can choose to be the sage heroes. That's what Linda Berger and Linda Edwards and Terry Pullman were talking about. And we can choose the last and probably the best of the heroes, which is the magician hero. So let's just talk and reflect for a second. We are legal writing professors, and I'm including everybody in the back there because you are at Mercer, which has the most amazing legal writing program, one that we all borrow from, one that we all look to, one that we all hope is what our school becomes. You are ambassadors of legal writing too. And it is the best job in the world. It is so wonderful. The worst day at work, the day where I'd say, I haven't been provocative enough, I think I'll go piss off the dean with something. The worst day of him saying, go back to your nest, little Robbins girl, which he actually said this week. But in a nice way, he meant it in a nice way. Those worst days are still the best job in the world. And we get to tell ourselves that. You call it, I had a bad day, yeah, but it's still a legal writing job. So how wonderful. Look how much we have to offer each other with symposiums like this. How much we have to offer our students who have sat there patiently in the back with only a few laptops going. Look how much we are offering the practicing bar, which is made up of our former students. It's not just a job about the mechanics of citation. It's not something that is just as concrete as we wish it was. Linda Berger said it more eloquently than I ever could. We're the people who study the art of communication and the art of persuasion. And we are set and poised to take over that part of the legal community, which, quite frankly, is, persuasion is a large part of being a lawyer. We have the time and desire to study it. We are the experts. We've been developing that expertise. We can understand that universe at a level that is deeper and better than what others can do. And therefore, we can transform the world because we have that power, and I'm using power in a good way. Rhetoric, persuasion, that's what our students want to learn from us. That's what they all want up there. Memo writing, that's really kind of boring. They want to learn how to be lawyers. We want to teach them. The present students want it. The past students, including lawyers out there practicing, want it. I'm guessing that the future students want it, but I don't have anything pithy to say, so you're just going to have to pretend that I had something profound that I just said about future students. So, how are we going to do it? How are we going to move forward and transform our world, become the magician, and sort of expand the universe, or be the universe? Well, we're going to do it by a couple of different ways. And this is where I get to be provocative, and even disagree with some of you a little bit. Okay, we can study it. Yes, there should be a required reading list. Oh my gosh, I just violated academic freedom by saying there should be a required reading list. There should be a required reading list. Articles out there by certain authors, we need to be reading them. Okay, yes, we read absolutely about pedagogy, but if there's an article written by Kathy Stanchi, we should be reading it. If there's an article written by our own Linda Berger, we should be reading it. Ellie Margolis, read it. Michael Smith, read it. Colleen Berger, read it. Michael Higdon, read it. And everybody in this room who's written, read it. Because they're great, And they have actually transformed the practice. Look at the appellate attorney blogs. They are writing about us. I've been paying attention. I know that Linda Berger's been paying attention. They are commenting on our scholarship. We're already doing it. Our students love it. When I said to my students today, I have to cancel class, I'm terribly sorry. I'm off to Macon, Georgia, and they wanted to know who's going to be there. Is Mary Beth Beasley going to be there? Can you say hi to Mary Beth Beasley for me? Is Suzanne Rowe going to be there? I read her article as a first year. Is Suzanne Rowe going to be there? Yes, they're all going to. Is Linda Edwards going to be there? Yes. They said, is Kathy Stanchey going to be there? Does she hate the Phillies? She writes about baseball. No, Kathy Stanchey's not going to be here. Yeah, we should be doing that. We can write about it. We can offer different paradigms. Our textbooks, right now they're kind of document designed. I'm being provocative here. We can actually write about legal writing in a persuasive, communicative way. It doesn't have to be about memos. It doesn't have to be about briefs. It has to be about advocacy that we happen to do through memos, or be they informal or formal, or through briefs. That's where we're headed. That's how we transform. We can teach it in new ways. I personally think the first year curriculum is now the least important based on the new economy. I know the 1L curriculum is what everybody fights about, but our students after their 1L year are not getting the legal jobs. Okay, their first year grades are not necessarily what's leading them into the jobs after their 2L summers, because there aren't as many jobs after their 2L summers. Right? You guys know this. It's what you do in your 2L year and your 3L year to get those clerkships and get those jobs. The first year writing curriculum is a foundation. The most important writing curriculum is in the upper levels. So yes, maybe that means that legal writing should remain at 2 credits in the first year, but those upper level courses we teach are 3 credits and 4 credits. And maybe it's writing across the curriculum. And maybe its entire course is devoted to the study of nothing but rhetoric, which used to be taught in the colleges and the high schools and should be taught again. Maybe their course is devoted to nothing but storytelling. Maybe their course is devoted to, I don't know, nothing but public speaking and oral advocacy. That's where the future is. That's where we can teach people when they need it. So absolutely, first year is foundation, but LWI has to be about more than just what's going on in those first 2 semesters, and has to move into something much bigger and broader for the audience that we care about the most, who are the ones back there, who are the ones who graduate, become the attorneys. So with that, I want to thank the Journal for putting this together. I want to thank Kristen and Pam and Brooke and David and Yana, and who else am I forget? I'm sorry, and Brittany, and the EIC Ryan, right? Oh my gosh, I don't remember my own student's name. And everybody else, and Linda, and I want to congratulate Chris, and I want to congratulate Laurel, who had to fly out to be with her son tomorrow, and thank everybody for being here. So.
I know the cars need to go back and people need to get out, so I'm just going to give one just last thanks. One person that we haven't actually had stand and recognize, and she's going to hate me for doing this, but I'm going to do it. Pam Lysa really has been the heart and soul behind this symposium, and I think everyone needs to give her a round of applause. I'm going to turn it over to Brittany for any announcements, but thank you, and thank you, students. I know it has been a long day. I hope it has not been godly boring. I hope that it's been enriching to see what those of us that think very deeply and lovingly about legal writing and the curriculum, the things that you experience, not only as students, but as future attorneys, do on a daily basis. So thank you very much.
Thank you all again so much for being here. We are just honored to have you at Mercer, and we're sad that you're leaving. 3 things. I'm happy to tell you that I just got an email that if you just can't wait for the transcript to come out, it's on YouTube from the morning session. You can watch the video of the morning session if you're interested. That's okay.
Did you get clearance for that voting?
I believe so. Or it will be on YouTube. It's not yet. And the other thing, grab some extra programs. We have programs in the outside, and just take some and take them back to your school. That'd be wonderful. And if you need directions to dinner, I still have copies of the map printed out. And if you have any other questions, thank you so much.